Hello, I'm Sarah Manassera,
And I'm Virginal Drash, and this is Clarinet and Community.
a video series dedicated to clarinet, community, and belonging.
Welcome. Bienvenidos. Pedagogue, performer, conductor, and activist Shaniee Kennedy shares with us how ambition, creativity, and nonlinear thinking might just be the perfect ingredients for a sustainable and dynamic career.
Hi, clarinetists. Welcome to another installment of Clarinet and Community. This is a particularly important and relevant interview that we did with Shaniee Kennedy, mostly because of the refreshing drive and versatility that she has and continues to exhibit in her career. In a career in music and the arts right now, especially with technology and accessibility to content changing, I believe having diverse tools in your toolbox is something that is really important to staying relevant. In this interview, we explore the many ways that Shaniee has continually challenged herself to enrich her career and skill set. We were so inspired by her ambition and her attitude going into the many different facets of her career. And we hope that you find inspiration and motivation through her career and story. We hope you enjoy. Thanks.
Well, today we are here with Shaniee Kennedy, an amazing pedagogue, performer, conductor, teacher. I mean, just does it all. Shaniee, thank you so much for joining Sarah and I today on Clarinet and Community. And I just want to kick things off really quickly and just ask you, if you could tell us about yourself, what you're doing now, and specifically, like what ways are you working to build community through your activities, with your performance, your performing, your teaching, all the things that you do.
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Just thank you for even having this podcast. I think it's a really important part of what needs to happen in the clarinet community. So thank you for that. And thanks for having me here. Who am I? Well, I'm Shaniee Kennedy, and I currently wear a ton of hats. I first went to CSUN for music education and clarinet performance, and then I went to UCLA for my master's degree in clarinet performance. And now I teach at the Master's University in Santa Clarita, California. I'm the adjunct clarinet professor there, and I also teach at two middle schools in the Las Virgenes School District. I play with my husband. He plays the oboe. We both play for our church every Sunday. They've got a full orchestra. And so we really enjoy doing that. And yeah, that's pretty much what's been going on for the last 5 or 6 years. And yeah, it's been a great pleasure.
Thanks so much. So I wanted to ask, I want to kind of start back at your beginning because um, the vast amount of things that you do or have done is so exciting. But when I was reading about you, one of the things that stood out to me was that you were a first generation college student. And I teach at a university where many of my students are first generation. And I wanted to ask if you could talk a little bit about your experience. What were some of the challenges of being a first generation student, and how did overcoming those challenges shape you into the person and musician you are today?
Well, when I was in middle school, that's when I first started playing the clarinet, and I knew that I wanted to go to college. Both me and my brother were raised by our great grandmother. And at a young age, I already knew that there was no way she was going to be able to afford to put us through college on Social Security. And that it was going to, if we wanted to, continue on, it was going to have to be through the things that I needed to acquire, which was money for college. And within that, I had to start thinking about what I wanted on my resume. So when I was in middle school, there was an opportunity to perform for the Kodak Theater at the time. And so I hopped on that. And I remember driving down the Hollywood freeway, and right on the side, the right side of it, there's the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra, big painted mural. And when I was driving past there every Sunday on our way back from church, I would just see that and think, wow, that would be so cool. Like, I didn't know who any of those people were, but I saw their instruments up there. And it was in that moment where I was like, I need to, start thinking about what I want when I grow up. And from there, I just became drum major at my high school. And during that time, got to really get into chamber music, and I got to audition and perform with the Pasadena Pops Symphony when I was a freshman in high school. And that also gave me a lot of inspiration to do what I needed to do to get to college. And so once I finally got into CSUN, my family was really excited. They were just ecstatic that I was going to get to, learn more about clarinet and become a teacher for music education. And then I pretty much had, two tracks that I could go on, either the credential route or the master's degree route. And I was offered a graduate fellowship for UCLA for the master's on clarinet. So I went that way, and it was a really great experience. I got to work with other students in the Compton School District. And it was an after school program where I had to go to all the classrooms and pretty much invite them to stay after school for music. And at the end of that, I had over 50 students who were just excited to be there and learn different instruments. So that was a really special experience that I got to participate in with UCLA. And that kind of gave me the assurance that, hey, I could do elementary school. I always wanted to do high school and do the marching band. But it was an extra skill that I had learned to work with the elementary school students. So after that, I had gone over to the Conejo Valley School District and taught at 5 elementary schools there, just teaching them band music and band instruments. And then I got an offer to go to Alamany High School because they were looking for a music teacher. And so I stayed there for 3 years. And now during the credential at Mount St. Mary's University, I am now teaching in the Las Virginias School District. So I think being a first generation student, I've always had education on my mind. And I've always wanted to give back and serve the community in any community that I can. And that's always just been a passion of mine.
I have a quick follow-up question, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice for first-generation music students from your own experience that you might give them?
I would say don't stop. I've known a lot of students who get started and they think, oh, it's too hard. It's like anything worth doing is going to be challenging, but you have to, not quit. You can't just give up, and you have to have the discipline to know what it actually takes to make it. And you have to be, a likable person. People want to work with you when you are kind and respectful, and you have a sense of decorum, and just be pleasant and be good.
I was so blown away by the level of focus and and how early in your life you really had to have a plan for yourself. Like middle school, you're saying, I need to go to college, I want to do clarinet. And I think that's amazing. And I think a lot of people could resonate with sort of this question, like, now what am I doing? Particularly since we've gone through this pandemic and whatever, and just like, now what has my life amounted to? What's going on here? And just to be at such an early age, having to be so sure about something, I think that's amazing. So congratulations to you. And that's not, I don't know if that's something we all experience. I didn't know what I wanted to, well, I knew what I wanted to be, but I didn't do that. I wanted to be a surgeon once upon a time. So it's completely different, but I love that for you. I love it. A part of your story that we haven't touched on yet is that you were a pageant winner, right?
Yes.
And, and I'm curious to know, how did that experience influence, shape, or otherwise inform your professional trajectory, you as a performing artist? Like, how did that tie into everything?
Well, thanks for asking. I'm actually going to be, so the program where I learned about pageantry and all its exciting world is at this program called LEAP at UCLA that I actually was asked to come back and mentor for this summer in July. And LEAP stands for Leadership Excellence Accelerating Potential. And it's this amazing program where they pretty much teach you how to jumpstart your career in 7 years or less. So for example, if you wanted to be a surgeon, they would show you different ways that maybe not everybody is thinking about and put you in connection with those people who already are surgeons. So you can have a mentor with them and ask them questions about their career and how they got started so you can avoid any pitfalls on your own journey. But at the time, so I went to LEAP at UCLA when I was a sophomore in college. At that point, like I said, I was raised by my great grandmother. So she was born in 1935. So she's very traditional, she was also a pastor's wife. So very, that kind of speaks for itself. You don't deviate. And so I was never allowed to go to parties, never had sleepovers, never had anything. So here I was, a sophomore in college, asking my grandmother if I could please go to UCLA to stay overnight for a week at this camp. And for whatever reason, she loved UCLA. So she was like, sure, go ahead. And I was like, awesome, this is going to be so exciting. So I was there and I noticed everyone had really white teeth and everyone had like an Australian accent. And I was like, this is kind of cool. That's weird that everyone has really white teeth, but maybe that's just how things are at UCLA. Who knew? And so it turned out that this was a leadership camp founded by two dentists who had invited all of their kids and all of their dental family friends' kids over to this leadership program to pretty much teach them how to start their own dental practice or whatever their dreams were. At the time, they had invited also all 50 girls from the Miss Universe pageant. So there's two like main big pageants that most people know about. The first is Miss America, and the other one is Miss Universe, Miss USA. So all the girls from Miss USA were there. So all the teens and all of the misses. So my roommate happened to be Miss Teen Virginia, and she was the most gorgeous, beautiful girl that I'd ever seen. You might recognize her now. She was Susie Evans on The Bachelor. This, I think, past season. But yeah, she was really sweet and really kind. And I had asked her, I was like, okay, how did you get into this pageant stuff? I was thinking like toddlers and tiaras. And she was like, no, I actually just started doing this in high school. And I was like, oh, cool. And she's like, yeah, they give you scholarship money for college. So me thinking I need money for college, I was like, okay. So I was kind of a creeper during that entire week. And I just watched all the girls. They just wore dresses and smiled. And I was like, okay, I could do that. Me being a super tomboy, I was like just really rough around the edges. I mean, I was drum major. I liked cars and mechanics and just like really boyish things. So I had never really worn a dress before, didn't know how to walk in heels. So after that week, I made it a goal for myself that I wanted to come back and coach. And I noticed that a lot of the coaches were former pageant winners. So I said, okay, I'm going to apply for a pageant and I'm going to get a scholarship and I'm going to try this out. So my very first pageant was Miss Teenage California in San Diego. And it was over 150 girls there. And you got like a 90-second speech and then you got to walk in your gown. And then that was pretty much it. They picked a winner. So before that, I was preparing. I was having to acquire sponsorships. So asking different businesses if they would like pretty much give me money to be able to compete. And a lot of businesses actually helped out and said yes. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, thank you. So that kind of gave me an extra boost of confidence and kind of taught me the world of sponsorships. And then, so I had a speech professor and I had asked her, can I present my 90-second speech in front of your class? And she was like, sure. And so I was trying to get as much experience as possible doing public speaking. And so after that, it was actually time to do the pageant. It was the day of. I was representing Chatsworth and I went up there. I don't even know what I said. It was probably really short because I was so nervous. And I turn around and I just remember saying, thank you. And I turn and I take a step and my heel is attached. It got attached to the bottom of my dress. I took a step, it ripped, I tripped. And I just remember being like, okay, I'm ready to go home right now. I don't want to do these ever again. But I made some friends there. And one of the friends that I made, she actually became the winner. And she went on to be, she did other pageants as well and went on to be Miss California. And she also became, I think, second runner-up or runner-up to Miss USA. So it was a great experience to meet all of the other girls, but that was my very first pageant experience, which was traumatizing, but it was great. And so after then, I met a lady in the audience and she's like, you know what? I think you would be better fit for the Miss USA pageants. And I was like, okay, really? Like, I just embarrassed myself. I don't even know why you're talking to me right now. Like, are you sure you want to be seen next to me? But no, so that was cool. And so I competed for Miss Newport USA and I got in the top 10. So that was awesome. And then there was another lady in the audience who said, you know, I think you would be great for the Miss America circuit. And I was like, okay. So I went and I tried out for that one. And that one was a little bit different. It was more of a scholarship competition. So you had to have a platform, and my platform was keeping music in California schools and the importance of live music. So I got to bring music education to the stage and talk a little bit about my background in that and why it's important for all schools to have a music education program, just so the students could be well-rounded. And from then, I competed in Miss San Fernando Valley in the same dress that was ripped. I don't know why I did that, but yeah. And so I didn't win that one, but there was a girl this time, not in the audience, but on stage, who said, you know, I'm starting a pageant. I think you would be great for that pageant. And I said, okay. She mentioned that there was a blind interview portion. So similar to similar to auditions for orchestras, they had a blind curtain. So like a black thing where they couldn't see you, but they could hear whatever you were saying. So they asked me a bunch of questions. I talked a lot about music education, and then the rest of the competition, it was not blind anymore. So they could see what you look like. They had a fun fashion, and then they had on-stage question, and then your final evening gown. And I ended up winning that one, and that one was Miss California Icon. And then from there, I had a great first year. I got to travel to Sacramento and advocate for 2 Senate bills for music education, and both of those got passed. So that was a fun experience with music advocacy. And then once my year of service was up for that, I decided to get back into the Miss America circuit for scholarships again. And I did the Miss Malibu Coast pageant in El Segundo, and I ended up winning that one. And so I finally got the chance to go to compete for Miss California for Miss America. And before then, for whatever reason, I don't know why, before that Miss Malibu pageant, I was doing my auditions on saxophone. I don't know why I did that. I just thought maybe it would be more exciting since people would recognize that. But actually, people resonated with the clarinet more because everyone had a story about how their grandfather used to play clarinet, or how they used to play clarinet when they were in middle school and they just have it sitting in their garage. So I played Rhapsody in Blue, and so that was really great for that. Miss Malibu Coast pageant. And then when I went on to compete for Miss California, I ended up doing Chardos, which is a violin piece, but it's a very pageant piece, so that everybody knew it. And I actually ended up winning the talent award for that night. And then I won overall the highest academic achievement award for Miss America. And I got quite a bit of scholarship money. So I didn't graduate with any debt from UCLA. And I got to be the commencement speaker at UCLA for the very first inaugural School of Music. The Herb Alpert School of Music had officially become its own entity at UCLA. And so I got to be the commencement speaker for there. So that's how I got into pageantry. A very long story, but it was definitely worth it.
That's amazing. Miss Shaniee, you are amazing. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think something that I am excited about when I hear you talk is how curious you are and how you're always looking for transferable skills. And I think a lot of students today feel a lot of fear about trying things that are outside of their comfort zone. And I think your courage and curiosity and thinking, well, I can do that, let me try it, is really inspiring, especially to those who are struggling to try new things. And that kind of leads me into the next thing I'm curious about is, because you've worn so many hats, and you do so many things, what inspired you to diversify like that? What are some of the reasons that you do conducting and performing and teaching and pageantry? And why do you think that's important to do?
I think it all comes back to all the really inspiring teachers that I had, starting from first my middle school teacher. If it weren't for him, I would have never picked up the instrument. And if they never said that they were going to a festival at Six Flags, I probably would have not gotten into the clarinet. I always wanted to go to theme parks. I was like, this is my chance. I get to go. And then from there, I guess my teacher at CSUN, she was a female in the clarinet industry, and she really taught me to, hold my own and to be able to play and, let my instrument speak for itself, and not be intimidated by anything or anyone and just go for it. When I was in the Clarinet Academy of America, Robert DeLutis was always talking to us about trying to, make sure that whatever you're doing, it's something that it's, that's actually going to propel your career forward as a clarinetist, and, diversify what you can do and don't just, try to be, not irreplaceable, but, the type of person who can, easily do, as many things as you can. And I knew that I needed to have the chance to learn different skills, but I would have never gotten the opportunities to do those things if I constantly said no and just stayed home or stayed in the practice room and didn't try to become as well-rounded of a person as I could possibly be. And I am a total introvert, so it doesn't come easy to me to speak to large amount of people and just have high energy all the time. But all those different programs that I was in really took me out of my comfort zone. And I learned that people are just people. I've spoken to millionaires before. I've spoken to, doctors and people and students who are just trying to figure out what they want. And everybody is the same. Everybody has a story. Everyone has, struggles that they've been through that they're trying to overcome, that, everyone's just trying to survive out here. So, I think that was humbling for me to know that I'm just the same as everybody else. It's not like, and anyone's better than anybody else. So that was really humbling. And I think if it weren't for my teachers, I wouldn't have had the courage to go for what I've done today.
That's amazing. I love your story. And I really resonate with the sort of practicality of your decisions. You're like, I want to do this. and this will help me be able to do this. I'm going to do this so I can do this. Like, it's very sort of like, I'm going to do this because I want to do it. And I love it. I love that. It's like, I want to go to Six Flags. And I remember those band trips to Six Flags. So I'm just like, yes, yes. So my question is, because we recognize this sort of necessity to thrive and succeed and to acquire these skills, and in that spirit, you are currently getting these teaching credentials, right?
Yes.
And you've just finished the process. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What did that entail? Like, we don't really talk about that. You don't see that conversation a lot. What does that look like for you? What was the impetus behind that? And, just tell us about that.
Yeah, I think not enough people are honest about the process. I had already been teaching for 10 years before even starting the credential program, which I always felt, every time I went somewhere, I was like, oh yeah, I'm teaching at this school, I'm coaching that school. Everyone would be like, oh, do you have the credential yet? Do you have the credential yet? And I'm just like, no, the opportunity hasn't presented itself yet. And then once it did, when I was at Alamany High School through their principal, I was finally eager to, be able to partake in that, because I was like, I don't want to get into debt. I don't want to have to do anything that is going to put an extra strain and weight on like the finances in my life. But the credential program is extremely intense. And even for someone who's already teaching for 10 years, especially as a music person, I think most teachers who teach music know that even if you're at a faculty meeting or some sort of a professional development workshop, it's not catered to the arts whatsoever. It's mostly catered to the more academic, so math, teacher science, English, history. And so I was the only music teacher in that credential program. And I often had to work alone, or if I did work in the other teacher groups, it was like, okay, how can I be extra creative and put this twist on it to where music is still incorporated? And luckily, when I was a child, because I loved music so much, when I was in those more academic classes like math, English, I always infused music in there. I was always trying to, in history class, talk about, okay, well, we're learning about the Civil War, and during this time, this composer was alive, and this is what the music sound like. So I would always play in my academic classes. They always knew me as the clarinet girl. That kind of, I guess, set me up for what I had to do for the credential program these past 2 years. But it's, even for someone who had so much experience in teaching, I still had to do so many, like every little thing. And I think maybe that's because maybe one day I'm supposed to help someone out who's going through all these little things. But when I was at CSUN, I had done 2 programs to avoid so much of the work that I still had to end up doing. So I did a dual program where I did music education, which gave me all of the classes that I needed to fulfill to prove that I could, teach music, all the pedagogic classes, all the wind performance and wind history and wind literature, just everything, general music, all of it. And those classes were supposed to help me not have to take the CSETs, which are these 3 big tests where you have to go and take a test for 2 hours. And I had to do that 3 times. And those tests are already horrible. And then those are they're all topics of music, from, music history to rhythms to genres and just everything you could possibly think of music. And then I also had to do the CBEST, which is just like a basic competency exam on just math and English and writing. And then on top of that, I had to do the California TPAs, which are horrible. I would not recommend, like, after this program, I'm just like, this is the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do in my life. And if I could go back and tell myself, I'm not entirely sure that I would do it, but we love the kids and you got to teach. So, I mean, it is what it is, but the California TPAs are no joke. It's like constantly writing like 8 different papers. And there's 2 cycles. So after you make it through the first cycle, it's like, oh, good. And then you find out there's a second one. You're like, what? And it's even worse than the first. And you have to video record yourself teaching and then go in and annotate the videos of why you said what you said here and how it related to your lesson plan there. And it's just it was a nightmare, but I'm glad it's over. I look forward to having that credential paper in my hand. And then after that, you still have to go another step further and you have to actually clear the credential because it's only a preliminary one. And throughout my entire process of trying to look for employment last summer, after I had ended my time at the Catholic school, I was just really blessed to find a school district that was willing to work with me in my last year there, and really, really commit to, just helping me finish this process. So I was very, very lucky in that regard.
That's incredible. The amount of work that goes into that feels, I mean, it's good to know that that's like, everyone's being held to such a great standard, but that makes me want to take a nap. Yeah, so I'm going to shift gears just a little bit from all the wonderful things you're doing, and kind of look at these things through the lens of your own experience. And I think it's something that hasn't been asked a lot in the past. But what has been your experience studying and training and working within this profession and all of the things you do as a woman of color?
For me, I would say that I've recognized early on that most oftentimes it's only me that looks like me in the room. And for me, that's always had a greater responsibility. I never wanted to seem incapable or, just there as a diversity plug. I wanted to show that I can be here just like everybody else and hold my own, and, break whatever stereotypes people have out there about people who look like me. One time I did a comedy workshop at Flappers Comedy Club, and I kind of talked about how in my school district, in my previous school district, how I was the only one there who had curly hair, and a lot of the students hadn't seen anybody with curly hair before. And of course, curly hair was a euphemism for, being a person of color. But, I think that it's, you have to be, like Olivia Pope said, twice as good for half. You just have to be, making sure that you're taking care of yourself, but also unassumingly you are representing your entire culture, which is crazy because everyone has their own background. Everyone has their own, we'll say, spices in the cake. And so you just have to remember who you are and not let people define who they think you are. And, if that ever comes up, just to let them know, like, this is how it actually is. And this is what's okay. And this is what's not. A lot of it is education, and why it has to be us that are teaching people what is appropriate and what's not is, it's always been confusing to me. But I think with everything, like all of that bias and prejudice at times, it starts in the home. So it's important for our future generations to properly train their children in what's correct, and to just treat everybody with decency and kindness and respect, and treat them how you want to be treated.
Great. I love that. And so much of that resonates with my own story. I've, find it a bit exhausting sometimes, a bit of a burnout from having to be twice as good for half the credit or acknowledgement. And I think that for me has been the double-edged sword of the idea of Black excellence, where yes, you're only seen as worthy if you're excellent, right? And that's has a psychological toll. And continuing along that thread, what is it like for you as a woman of color within this predominantly white male industry, and as an education advocate? How would you further progress this discussion and dialogue around diversity, equality, justice, and inclusion? And what would you like to see happening? Like, what responsibility, if any, do you feel towards the clarinet community as a whole? A couple of questions in there, so jump in.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said of just including more people and getting their stories out there. And I think, the more that people become friends with people that don't necessarily look like them, the more they learn about, all these different facets of different people's lives. I think specifically within the clarinet community, I think a lot of, the Black Lives Matter things and all of the George Floyd, the recent anniversary of that tragic event, a lot of people during that time were, pumping out, we've got this for people of color and that and this and that. And then all of a sudden it just got dropped. And it's like, okay, you can't just say that you're supportive to get extra coins in your pocket and then drop those people or, stop supporting those initiatives once you get what you want. It's kind of an ongoing process. And I think, it's going to take a lot of people working together and being honest with themselves about what they're comfortable with and who they're comfortable supporting. And, just I think the clarinet community is doing better about that. And I think, podcasts like this and organizations like this are, doing the work that it takes. But I would like to see a lot more companies being more supportive of not just, women or people of color, but just everybody. Everybody's got their own story, and really branching out to support those people.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like the conversation kind of did get dropped a little bit, and that it's not just a topic; it's something that we need to continue to work towards and humanize everyone. I do. I toe a strange line because I have light skin, but I'm Palestinian, and so I am easily palatable, I suppose. And so I often will talk with people about not. It's not just like I programmed a person of color on my concert. I did it.
Yeah.
It's a conversation that we need to humanize all of the composers and all of the performers, that we all have a story. So I just really, really appreciate that you have that perspective and that you shared that with us. So thank you. So I'm going to shift gears again. I guess I'm the gear shifter today. Well, not totally, but I want to talk about, you're so busy, so I know that this has changed a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about your time with the 4-play clarinet quartet. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the group and what made it special. And also why you thought it was important as a group to pursue performing music that was not traditional classical music.
Yeah, so when I had stepped into the group, they'd already gotten things started at Cal State Fullerton, and I had actually met Claire. She's the one who wears the hat at RDG in which at the time was on Lockmart in Los Angeles, and I was sitting there because my husband was getting oboe cane, and I had recognized her from one of the videos, and I was like, oh, I think she's that girl from 4-play clarinet. And I was like, no, I can't talk to her. That's too weird. And then I was like, no, Shaniee, you went to LEAP. You have to talk to everyone you meet. And so I was like, whatever. She's never going to see me again. I was like, hey, aren't you that girl from 4-play clarinet? And she was like, oh, yes, I am. And her French accent, very fancy. And I was like, oh, cool. And so we started talking. And then she said, yeah, we've actually got an opening in the group. Maybe I can talk to the girls and then we can have rehearsal and see how things go. And I was like, sure. So we had a rehearsal. Everything was great. And I was with the group for 5 years. And within those 5 years, we got to travel and make tons of really cool music videos. And although the music was less traditional, we still had our professional backgrounds infused within that. So the girls had excellent arranging skills and technology skills, which I don't have, but they were like fantastic at all that. And every person got to put their little flavor to make the group what it was. And I think it was important to be a part of that and to do that, especially with today's climate and with just women in general, we kind of stepped out of the mold of, only sticking to Mozart and Brahms and doing all the traditional things and kind of putting our own twist on that, and making it fun. Our main goal was to get more students excited in their music programs to play the clarinet and know that it can be as cool as guitar. It can be as cool as saxophone. And, that it can do, the clarinet is so versatile and so exciting in just a ton of different ways. And that whatever your idea is in your head, you can definitely bring it out. And YouTube was a great tool for that, to help get us exposure and help other people from around the world see that clarinet can be extremely fun.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I'm gonna be honest with you. Clarinet quartet has always been one of those things. I'm like, do I have to do it? Because the music, they always write for clarinets like we're violins. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to like play a beautiful melody right now. But I love that. I love that you guys got together and really championing this sort of this love of music for the sake of just making great music and the clarinet. And I think that's brilliant. And I love like the way you guys were styled. And that's actually how I initially came across you, from a video you guys had out. So thank you for sharing that. I guess to just wrap up really briefly and succinctly is just to ask one final question. A great summative question, I suppose, is what advice do you have for young clarinetists wanting to follow in your footsteps, or, forge a path and follow their own journey and be confident in doing that, which is obviously something you can speak to so wholeheartedly because you have truly blazed the trail and done what was right for you and loved every step of it. I love it. And you just got these skills. So how would you encourage, or what would you tell young clarinetists to inspire them, encourage them to continue on their path or to follow you? And the other bit to that question is, how can they integrate themselves into music while preserving their own interests and identity?
Wow, thank you. Well, first off, thanks for having me here again. I really appreciate it. I think the advice that I would give would be advice that I would have given my younger self, and that would have been just try everything. Say yes to everything that is good to do, that you think is really gonna that you'd be proud to put on your resume and have represent you represent that. For me, I was always focused on making sure that I was doing whatever was correct in my head, and also making sure that things didn't, deviate from the brand that I wanted to present. I love art. I love to do cartooning and arts and crafts, making things. And I always wanted to incorporate music within that. And once I, found a platform that allowed me to do those things, I wanted to, broadcast those out and share them with as much as I could. So for those students who are looking to do things like that, I would say just go for it. Don't let self-doubt creep into your mind. Don't let thoughts, ideas, and suggestions of negativity or, oh, but I tried this and I wasn't good at it, or somebody said this. You really have to protect your peace and protect what's going on in your own head, and just go for it. What's the worst that can happen?
That's a really wonderful sentiment. What's the worst that can happen? I love that. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure talking to you about your career, and it's been really inspiring. I want all of my students to listen to this and remember that it's okay to take risks, and that there's always a transferable skill that you can pull from an experience.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.